An excerpt from the book The Yes of Jesus Christ, Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger. The classical example of the distinction between optimism and believing hope is provided for me by the prophet Jeremiah. Because of his pessimism, he was condemned and imprisoned. The official optimism of the military, the nobility, the priesthood, and the establishment prophets demanded the conviction that God would protect his city and his temple. God was thus degraded to become the guarantee of human success and misused as the justification for irrationalism. The real, empirically comprehensible situation excluded a Jewish military success against the Babylonians. The rational outcome of a sober analysis of the situation had therefore to be to strive for an honorable compromise, as long as the enemy was prepared to concede this. The official optimism, on the contrary, demanded a continuation of the struggle and the firm conviction that this would end in victory. The contrast between Jeremiah on the one hand and Israel's religious and political elite on the other provides a valid representation of the nature of the contrast between, on the one hand, a theology that has become politicized, irrational, and directed at ideological power, and, on the other, the realism of the believer who incorporates genuine morality and political rationality. In this realism, the different levels of human being and human thought are related to each other correctly, without confusion or false distinction. From the point of view of official optimism, the prophet's realism appeared as gross and inadmissible pessimism. Typical of this opposition is the encounter between Jeremiah and Hananiah, the prophet of success who justified and defended the official optimism. Jeremiah, the true prophet, depends by contrast on the realism of reason as a moral duty, condemns ideological optimism, and lets God's promise and its in fact unconquerable hope become visible. Jeremiah 28. The criterion that Jeremiah lays down in verse 9 remains valid. The proclamation of empirical successes is to be judged by empirical criteria and cannot rely on theology. Anyone who today proclaims an ideal and perfect society for tomorrow must provide empirical proof for this announcement and cannot gloss over his or her claim with theological arguments. The message of God's kingdom and salvation cannot be adduced as proof that certain social techniques will bring forth a society that functions within history and does so empirically. In Israel's catastrophic defeat, the collapse of all the preceding varieties of optimism, Jeremiah, the pessimist, showed himself to be the true bearer of hope. For the others, everything had necessarily to have come to an end with this defeat. For him, everything at this moment was beginning anew. God is never defeated, and his promises do not collapse in human defeats. Indeed, they become greater as love grows to the extent that the beloved has need of it. Israel's defeat and the official extinction of its national existence became the hour of the pessimist Jeremiah and his message of hope. In this moment, the prophet finds immortal words of comfort. He provides the power to start again and to hope, which endured through the darkness of 70 years' exile up to the return home. It was precisely in this hour that the proclamation of the new covenant was born. Jeremiah 31 through 34. The new presence of God through his Spirit in our hearts. From this hour date words that at the Last Supper Jesus was to take up again and disclose in their full meaning. See Luke 22:20. In the hour of his defeat by death, which was also his final and definitive victory. For his rejection of official optimism, Jeremiah was condemned as a pessimist. But this pessimism is inseparably one with the greater and unconquerable hope that he proclaimed. Indeed, it was only this true hope that enabled him to display the realism of resistance to mendacious optimism. In this inseparable unity of realism and true hope, Jeremiah is, incidentally, the representative of all true prophets. The theory put forward by many scholars that all great prophets have been prophets of doom is false, but it is correct that their genuinely theological hope did not coincide with superficial optimism, and that, as bearers of true hope, these great figures were at the same time relentless critics of current parodies of hope.